So we're at the very bottom of our worksheet, and we have this question of a possible dangling infinitive. Yeah, it's possible. So any of our verbals can possibly dangle if they don't agree with the actual subject. So let's take a look at the possibility of how we could have a dangling infinitive and how we also fix that dangling infinitive. So I have these three sentences. It's kind of a variation of what the author has in her textbook. And so I want to diagram A and B together and then diagram C. So what that basically means is I'm going to need space on that bottom of that worksheet for two diagrams. So just give yourself space for two diagrams, either side by side or one on top of the other one. I ended up doing one on top of the other one and having plenty of room. So let's see how we got. So let's take on this first one, which says, her fans would like for Sabrina to win class president. Working with my third period sentences. So I can see that my verb is would like and my subject is fans. So I'm going to kind of build this over here with a little space above. So I know I'm going to have to build a tree eventually. Fans. I'm making tea in the background. So if you hear the water boiling, you won't fret. There we go. Her fans. Our verb is would like. And then I have this infinitive to win. Well, to win is actually my direct object. So I'm going to put my direct object sitting right here. Hello. Like that, to win. And then we'll go into our direct object of that verb to win what? President. And then we have class president. I know I didn't put in for Sabrina. I didn't forget her, but I just want to prove something to you. What we would have right now is we would call this a dangling infinitive because the infinitive to win doesn't work with the subject. Remember, the subject controls all the verbs. Well, the fans are the ones who would like, but the fans aren't winning class president. Sabrina is. So therefore, Sabrina actually is going to be the subject of this infinitive. And you can have a subject of an infinitive. So a subject of an infinitive actually sits in front of that infinitive. So just like we can have a subject for a gerund, I can have a subject for an infinitive. Now with a gerund, we couldn't put the word right in front of it because the gerund was already part noun, part verb. But this is just simply to win. So what I get to do with an infinitive is I get to actually put Sabrina here. Now she's going to sit here on a flat line because she's a noun, and nouns and verbs are always on horizontal or flat lines. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a line right here that goes all the way through. I'm going to change the color too. I want you to see that this line here is sort of replicating this line here. I'm separating my subject from my verb. I'm separating my subject from my verb. And then sometimes I would have this word for, which kind of gets us into this structure. So for is a preposition to get us into the word Sabrina. So the word for sits here. So I end up having her fans would like for Sabrina to win class president. What I've done for myself here, I'm just going to label it, is we call this the subject of the infinitive. And that would be this guy right here. Because, see, it's going to be right my way. What was I thinking? Come on, Marsh. How about that? So this is the subject of the infinitive. What's happening is it's actually then fixing the problem of fans aren't winning class president, but Sabrina is. So I gave this a subject for that infinitive. All right, this line's going to drive me nuts. Let's get rid of him. Now, when I change this from the A sentence to the B sentence, you'll notice in the B sentence, the word for is missing. And that's okay. You're allowed to. You don't have to have the word for. So if the word for was missing, you would just simply say, her fans would like Sabrina to win class president. I love that. So in this case, Sabrina becomes the subject of still that infinitive. You don't have to have the word for. So now let's take a look at sentence C. And this is one of the rare times where what the author comes up with is different from what I come up with. And I know she's a professor at Penn State, but I think she's wrong. All right, so let me show you what's going on here. This one says, Tegan asked the undecided voters to vote for Sabrina. So this is what we're going to do. So we're going to build our sentence down here to some room above. So I'm going to come and go right here. I'm going to say Tegan asked and I have this infinitive, and it has to be up on a tree, and it has to be in some kind of noun position. Just like this one was sitting here as a direct object, this one I think is also still a direct object. That's a really kind of wavy tree trunk, but we'll go with it anyway. And so far, the author does not disagree with me. We would be right on time together, right on time together. Seriously, Jeffrey. We would be right in agreement with each other. So we'd say Tegan asks, and we say to vote, we're voting for Sabrina. Oh. And then we have this thing which says the undecided voters. So this is what the author does. I'm going to put it in a color that designates this is the author. So I'm going to put this in this little pale color. This is what she says. She says it's an indirect object. She comes down and over, and she puts voters down here. You don't have to draw this because I think she's wrong. So the voters, undecided voters. All right, there it is. And she calls it an indirect object. Well, my problem of this is if I do it and treat it as an indirect object, I have a dangling infinitive. This guy now dangles. According to the author's diagram, it sounds like Tegan is asking to vote for Sabrina, or Tegan is asking the voters to vote for Sabrina. But think about how Tegan is also the one who's voting for Sabrina. I'm sure Tegan's voting for Sabrina. Why would he ask other people to vote if he weren't voting as well? But that's not the point of the sentence. The point of the sentence isn't that Tegan is voting for Sabrina. The point of the sentence is that he's asking the voters, these people who have undecided voters, to vote for Sabrina. That's why when I draw it, I'm going to put mine in my favorite color of orange. I think undecided voters sits up here. I think it sits right up here as the subject of this infinitive. I blanked completely on how to write the word undecided. That's why there was a dramatic pause there. I think that's what it is. And so the purpose of doing the A and B sentence is because I want to show you that I think the C sentence is just like the A and B sentence. I think it's basically the B sentence where you've cut out the word for. I think you're saying Tegan asked for the undecided voters to vote for Sabrina. So when I hunted down the author and I sent her an email and asked her some questions, I asked her about this one. I said, well, isn't this really a subject of the infinitive? And she says, I think it's an indirect object. And she said, because Tegan asked somebody something, and that's the definition of an indirect object. She's like, the word for is understood. And I said, I know the word for is understood. It's kind of floating up here. It's the for voters. That's where it is, just like we had for Sabrina. And so we went back and forth for a little bit, and finally, she didn't necessarily say that I was right, but she didn't say that I was wrong. She just simply said that I made a really good point, which I think is her way as an 85-year-old college professor to say, I think you're right on this one. So I took it as a win. Anyway, it's really important that we understand that we can have now subjects for infinitives. Sometimes the word for is literally there, and sometimes it's understood, but it's always going to be sitting right in front of the infinitive with a line going all the way through to separate the subject from the verb. All right. Hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed giving it to you, and my tea is ready.